Wild West world of podcasting, there is one podcast that is authentic and genuine and continues to stand tall in its originality. Based on a passion for his guests, their work, and his love of podcasting, Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast get amazing, diverse, unique guests found nowhere else. The variety and quality are endless. There is something for everyone. Derek Thomas is the hero you deserve. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector. Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
My name is Volker Bertelmann, and you're listening to Monday Morning Critic.
So there's a ton I want to ask you, but I'll condense it because there's just so much to your life. So people that know your music know you as Hauschka as well, right?
Yeah.
What do people call you on a regular basis? Do they call you Volker? Do they call you Hauschka? Is Hauschka like a professional name? And I know you've answered this question probably countless times, but for those listening that maybe aren't familiar with what you prefer to be called, just explain that.
Well, Hauschka is in a way my a kind of band name, but it's a band with one person, and that's me,
Yeah.
And under the name Hauschka, I create maybe music that has no attachment to any. There is nobody else responsible for what is coming out of me. I mean, there are collaborations sometimes where you, of course, collaborate with somebody, and it's a mix of ideas. But in the most places, for example, film music is always a derivative of diverse influences from the opinion of the director, of course, first of all. Then it's maybe my process of trying to find an idea that matches with the idea of the director. Once that is done and we are very happy, then suddenly there is another voice coming from the production or from other responsible people, and then you have to go through that mill again and digest certain things. Sometimes under lucky circumstances, you have the freedom to do what you like, but mostly it's a mix out of everything. And that's why I felt at some point I have to maybe split the Hauschka part of it, because my Hauschka releases are a little bit more artistic approaches, where I'm just sitting maybe a couple of months in my studio and I'm just thinking about it's a little bit like making an oil painting,
Gotcha.
for yourself. And film music is a little bit, for me, a different process.
Yeah, I got you. That's a great explanation. And before I get into your wonderful career, is there so I know right now you're in Germany, correct? Is that okay? I thought I read, because I'm in Massachusetts, I thought I read where you lived in Massachusetts for a while. Is that complete nonsense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say,
but I was many times in Massachusetts, and I mean, honestly, it's one of my favorite places. And I'm not saying that about every country. There are some parts in the US where I very lively remember when I made tours or I made concerts, that there was a vibe that reminds me of my hometown here in Germany, that has a lot of wood, a lot of forest, but there's also a lot of industry and old working class people where I grew up. I mean, my grandfather was a smith, And in my family, there was a lot of, I would say, very grounded. Of course, also, I mean, this comes as well with a lot of other adjectives, because of course you are maybe not traveling so much in the world, so there's also a mixture of groundness, and I really loved that when I traveled in the US. I found these places where I always felt connected to straight away.
Yeah, yeah, that's really well said. And getting into your life, boy, is it interesting. You start writing music at the age of 10. Volker, I thought I heard somewhere where you came, and hopefully I'm right on this. You came from a you were from a religious family. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say? Yeah, and
absolutely. Well, very strong religious, I have to say. It's not even religious is the, I would say, in my family was the low point. Extreme religious. That was the, yeah.
yeah. I was an altar boy, so my mom had me there every Sunday. It was a big part of our lives too, and she took so much pride in that. But
Mhm,
that's kind of where you start developing this love for music, because you start writing music at 10.
mhm,
And I think it was your great aunt that you know provides you with a piano, which, as everyone knows, are very
mhm,
expensive. Do I have that
mhm.
part of your life correct, Volker?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And maybe to describe you a little bit the tension that was there, because the head of the church that I was in, or my family was a part of, he was born 1882 when I was young. He was still the head of that church. So he was growing up in a time where there was no cars. There was, like only the horse was doing mainly everything.
Yeah.
I had to discuss with a guy like that when I wanted to invent a Moog synthesizer into into our procedure, into the songs. I wanted to have some bass in there, so I said, "Can I get some Moog synthesizer in there?" And he was like, "Oh man, this is a instrument of the devil," you know. So I had to convince everyone, like, very slightly with, and at some point I was able to actually have a first Moog prodigy to play the bass parts of it. And during my growing up, the church was of course changing a lot, because the old people were disappearing, young ideas or new ideas were coming in, and some of them were even more extreme than the old ones, and some were more loose. So my grand aunt was in the opinion that when she gives me a piano, and she also financed me that Moog synthesizer, because she was thinking
Wow.
that when I'm working in music, I could play a lot of Bach pieces with piano and synthesizer, not knowing that I was, of course, a part of a band at that time already. And when I had a rehearsal space, and we played Rolling Stones songs, and all sorts of covers at that time, and I was in urge of modern sounds. So that was a little bit the connection to my grand aunt, and she was a wonderful woman. But she was also driven by a complete different idea of what I should do with this, with the music. If she would see what I'm doing now, she might be happy, but she would maybe say, the films are sometimes a little too dark, you know.
Yeah, but God bless her for at least we look at modern times where there's kids that want to get involved in music, and the challenge is getting these expensive instruments into their hands, right? And
Mhm.
good and thankfully you have a great aunt, maybe for other purposes, but still that provides you with those instruments. That's kind of a huge moment in your life.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
she was born in 1907, and when I was a kid, she was making her own Super 8 films with the camera, like trick films. It was very interesting.
Wow.
There was something in her that was very creative, but you could sense actually the pressure of her childhood, and the restrictions of how women had to be at that time. And you could actually sense that there was no door for her to escape into an area where maybe her talents could have grown. So and I have to say, I was, because this village where I grew up is very small. I had a kind of similar experience coming from that place that is a little bit timeless. and maybe where you just feel like no modernism is arriving, where you just think like, oh, we have now there's now this and this car coming through town, not knowing that this car exists already 30 years or something like that.
Yeah, so yeah, and we mentioned piano, right? And for those listening that are musicians, what is the price of a? I mean, this is like a non-related question. I've been dying to ask you this. What is the price of a good? I mean, I imagine the price of what you use and what Dustin uses and what many of the film composers use. I would imagine they're on the higher end, right? What is a good priced piano? Anything, Volker, that you wanted to say on that?
Well, a good price piano is the one that creates the sound that you enjoy and that is actually doing the job for you. That means my first piano was a piano that my grandaunt bought me that costed 500 euros. And there were a few things broken on that piano because it was already old. There was the resonance body had a little bit of hair of cuts in there, but this piano helped me to to create an idea of what I wanted to do next. And the first proper concert upright piano that I had was when I bought that when I was at the end of my 30s, because that was the first time I had money left over.
Right.
But not so much. So the upright, a good upright, I would say that has a really good, nice bass and that has a very even sound, maybe costs around 10,000 euros, something like that, a little bit more, and upper, towards 20. So in that area, but you can always be, you can buy used ones, used pianos that are very nicely prepared, and they are much cheaper. And a lot of times what I don't like, and I learned that a lot when I was touring in America, in Germany, I think a lot of people tell you right away when you have an idea, don't do it, forget about it.
Talk you off the
yeah, they actually they don't even let you expand on this idea, and even if it's unbelievable that you could come out of a village and get at some point a nomination for a film. That is an unbelievable process. If I would have listened to the people that were giving me advice, I would have never left the town. But I think the idea is actually to throw this overboard and just believe in when you have something that you're really passionate about. It's just sometimes you're just a hairpin away from that actually these things are happening, but you don't know about it. You have to, in a way, grow into it. And the more you grow into it, the more your interest is going towards things that were not interesting to you beforehand. And suddenly the chances are just around the corner, but you didn't know. So that's a little bit with the piano, the same thing. Never let somebody tell you, it's too expensive for you, forget about it, or don't buy a piano. The good thing is that if you have an own piano, you stand up in the morning with a coffee and you can just play on a proper instrument.
Right. Good. That's well said. Did you ever find yourself close to saying, you know what, maybe they're right, maybe this is not a practical thing for me, maybe I should throw the towel in? Were you ever close to that early on?
Oh well, with a music career,
like
many times.
Wow.
I mean, the first thing where I was throwing my career as a musician away was when I was studying medicine.
Right.
So my medicine studies were in a way something that my parents really wanted from me, and that was the only thing where I had the feeling maybe knowledge and doing something social for other people is maybe connecting in that job. So I was somehow feeling that this could be an option, but finding out that my passion is something completely different. And I'm glad that I found it again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So I have to say, I'm all when I interview people that I really admire, such as yourself, I really find that I always learn something, right? And I feel like with you, the idea of prepared piano is something that I've learned. Like that's just something I'm sure people that are familiar with this are like, well, that's pretty obvious. Well, to some of us, it's not, but the idea that you alter a piano and are always kind of developing that great unique sound. Talk about the idea of what prepared piano is, and are you always tinkering with it? Are you always, I'll let you explain it because I'll butcher it, but I just think it's fascinating, Volker, the way I was watching an interview with you, and you were going into how you use your prepared piano, what you use. I was fascinated by how that process works.
Well, it's actually, I mean, I don't want to make it bigger than it is, but it's more like a philosophy of starting to throw usual things a little bit in the bin, because if you are working and you're always fulfilling the expectations of what is already there, you can't move. You make it maybe a little bit better, or the song or the hit has a much bigger hook line than the one that was existing before.
Right.
But in general, the music is in a way very similar. It has a functionality. My feeling was I was caught in these, in these parameters that people feeded me in terms of what is good music. And so I had to find a way I had to go first through the process of being signed to a major label and making hip hop music,
right,
and being in a chart kind of orientated business. But after that was failing because I didn't felt very well in the role of, getting getting a kind of image, that was not mine. I had the feeling I need an own way of, getting creative and losing the doubts about myself, which is also a very deep indicator of, not knowing who you are and what you want to do is a lot of times something where you just float from one thing to the other, and the first thing you can grab, you grab. But that doesn't mean that this is good for you.
Right.
So the prepared piano is in a way something where I use objects and things that are changing the tonality of the strings or of each tone. So I can put things on the strings and they jump, or they create resonance, or they damp the strings. So suddenly the piano is not only a piano instrument, it can be also a percussive instrument. It can sound like a drum, or it can sound like, it's a little bit like a synthesizer that is analog, but you can, by using tape, art, like rubber, these kind of, not clay, but the things that you
like eraser, like a rubber eraser.
Like an art eraser, or you use wooden sticks or screws. By that you can create overtones and you can mute the tonality of the piano, and that creates in a way a full sample library just with your hands. You don't have to open a plugin, you don't have to open a computer. And my feeling was a little bit, I love electronic music, and I'm a big fan of abstract, like soundscapes and field recordings. But when I played piano in the original way, my piano playing was always, it was the melody of a song, or it was Imagine, or it was whatever, the accompaniment of a song, or it was a Bach piece, or it was a Mozart piece. But there was never this kind of, this kind of sound. There were no insects, I would say. I call them the insects. And so what I tried is to find a way of creating insects without using a computer and a full battery of equipment that made me struggle, because then I would have had a transportation problem. Then I need a sound engineer with me. I just wanted to go in a place with a piano and my bag, and I wanted to create electronic music without any electricity.
Right.
Is there
like I almost feel like what you're doing is, I mean, you're right. I feel like you can get some similar sounds from a computer, from whatever other places, but I almost feel like what you're doing is so much more organic and authentic. To me, those are my words. I feel that, experimenting with ping pong balls or bolts or whatever you're using, I just think there's so much. It's just such an authentic way you have, Volker. I don't know. I feel like it, and you can hear it in the music, I feel like.
Well, I mean, I'm very happy that you feel like that, because it's a little bit the first time that I felt connected to something that I'm doing, where I was feeling this is actually expressing my joy of
Right.
doing something, you know. And if I would say everyone has maybe a part in his life or in her life where you actually do something and you deeply feel a longing or a deep satisfaction, but a lot of times you have the doubt that others would feel the same satisfaction as you. But you know, my feeling was always wrong, because I really, when I started to be satisfied, people that were coming to my concerts were actually giving me the feedback, hey, I'm exactly feeling what you're, you know, in a way I'm feeling satisfied as well, because you let me travel, my mind was going to certain places, I was, you know, I was in tension, then I was in a relief, and you know, all these moments. And I'm very glad that there is a way that, you know, that there is an intuitive strength that you can transport to others, and that a lot of times makes the, maybe the feeling that people think he's very authentic.
Well, that's well said. You know, and when I think of piano, and I always people who listen to my podcast probably get so sick of me bringing his name up, but when I think of composers, I think of great ones like you. And when I think of piano, I always think of Thomas Newman.
Mhm.
When you think of Thomas Newman, Volker, what comes to mind when you think of that name? When you think of what he does?
Well, I think first of all, I think he's a very complete, for me, a quite complete composer, because there's so much diversity in his work, and at the same time, he's coming from a very old traditional family, which I think is a, for me sometimes not painful, but I would sometimes love to be in a family that has already a long tradition in film music, and where, which is at the same time, of course, a big struggle, because you have many people around you,
Yeah.
you know, that do also music, and then you look at the others and yeah, he's not so successful, but he is fantastic. So there's always this, maybe this tension, and I don't know, it's just something where I am, it's, you know, it's just a hypothesis, in a way. I'm just
Yeah.
fantasizing about it, but I totally think that he's maybe one of the not pioneers, but I think he influenced a lot of other musicians, that film composers, in a very strong way.
Wow, that's beautifully said. And speaking of, we're going to get into your relationship with this next person I'm about to bring up. Um, what makes Dustin O'Halloran your friend and colleague? What makes him so good?
Well, first of all, he's a very wonderful, friendly man.
Yeah,
And when I met him the first time, that is already in 2007 or 2006, he came to a concert in Italy to, you know, to ask me about the prepared piano technique. And I think that meeting was so, well, you know, sometimes there are you meet people and you know they will maybe stay in your life forever.
yeah. Oh, that's
And
so well said.
he was a person where I just felt like, yeah, he's a man that will always be around. And what makes it fantastic to work with him is that there is not, well, he's, you know, he has his own opinion and will and artistic approach,
Yeah,
and that's wonderful to have a kind of counterpart in a kind of collaboration. But at the same time, he's very you know, giving, and there's no ego involved, which I think in our days more and more, you know, you have to make sure that it's not about, I want to have everything, it's mine, it's mine, it's
yeah,
mine, I
yeah, yeah.
grab everything. It needs people that are, in a way, having visions about, you know, sharing, spreading, you know, success with, or helping others to have success as well. It's more a support. And with Dustin, I never had the feeling that there's any kind of tension between the two of us. It was much more a giving process. And what is nice is when you compose something on one day and you put it in the Dropbox or in a, you know, in a place where you can download it, and the next morning when you wake up, the music has developed.
Wow,
It's
yeah, that's
it's like
cool.
a fairy
Yeah,
tale. It's
yeah,
like a
that's
fairy
so
tale.
cool.
you know?
Yeah.
And you just like, oh man, that's fantastic. And you grab it and you continue and then you send it back and then somebody else works on it. And it is something where you feel always creative and you feel like, oh, why is he doing this? Or this is very interesting. I've never thought about it. Things like that, you know?
Yeah, Volker, I demand that you and Dustin add me to your Dropbox because I would like to get a listen to these wonderful sounds. So yeah, and I have to believe that your strong friendship, the bond that you two have, allows you to be very honest with each other. You know, this works, this doesn't work, or altering a little bit, or having this great line of communication because the music doesn't lie. You're a phenomenal composer, whether you're working with Dustin or alone, but together you guys make some of the best music. It's just such a wonderful team that you have.
Oh, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
mean, honesty, and as you know, maybe honesty is not so easy.
No.
Even with people that you really love, you know, to find a level where actually the truth is not hurting someone else, where you have an understanding of that actually through criticism is only is important for growth,
Right.
in a way. But to understand that, you need a person like Dustin, for me,
Yeah.
that, you know, where you can actually talk about music or ideas and you can say, I don't know if that is the right way, or, you know.
Yeah. And looking at my notes together for those listening, The Art of Racing in the Rain, you guys have worked on together, Ammonite, The Old Guard, A Christmas Carol, and obviously the spectacular Lion, which we'll dive into. But just really quick, The Art of Racing in the Rain was so powerful. It's one of the very few movies I had to walk away from because I felt if I kept watching it, my heart was going to pour out. It was such a beautiful and such an amazing score. But I have to say, is it tough for you to walk away? So when you're finally done, right? Is it tough for you just to say, okay, we've created it, it's there, it's done? Or are you always wanting to tinker and tinker and tinker? What is that? Is that line tough, Volker, to know, okay, it's done, here you go?
It's actually a relief.
Oh, okay.
Because and I'm not saying because it's every score process is, you know, a pain in the ass. It's much more like a you know, you work very intense on a film like that, and you work and work and work, and you try to make the best out of it, and you squeeze and you form, and you know, it's a physical work. But at some point you need a point where you have the perspective that the process ends. And if that doesn't happen, then it can easily, you know, it can swing into the other direction where you hate what you're doing, because, you know, it's I mean, creative work needs always I would say a reflection in the outside that gives you, you know, gives you something back. And that in a way is a curve that can encourage you to continue to make it better, but when then suddenly your best is suddenly not anymore in there,
Right.
or
Right.
your best is suddenly, you know, suddenly somebody else comes in and he slams the hammer on all the best ideas that you had and says, you know, nothing works like that, you know, we need something new, fresh approach. Then that can happen, that you are just feeling like a squeezed lemon, and you just want to go home and just dive in the pool, or you just want to walk a long walk for days and days just to get a little bit of a free spirit, and you know, and get your detached from a film. And so I think a natural process is to finish the work and let it go and release it into the world.
Yeah.
And the only thing that is very sad about that process is that the time to spend with your friend is over.
Oh, yeah. I never
You know?
thought of it that way. Yeah.
You just go separate paths, and then there is another, you know, another months or whatever that or years that you don't see each other, and then there's again a film or a concert, and you see each other, and that is my life is in a way based on relationships to people.
Right.
Everything that I'm doing is in a way a vehicle, like a mobile, or an object to meet people and talk to them, and, you know, and have an exchange of thoughts. The music is of course something that is important for me, and that is a nice way of expressing, But the first thing is that I meet people in the audience, that I can travel, I find new places, new ideas, and my mind can grow. I think that's mainly the purpose of it.
Yeah, and so when you and Dustin are done with projects, I'm sure there's times where you have your own project or he has his own. I'm sure you
Mhm.
guys pick each other's brains for not ideas, but like get an opinion or get a thought. You guys have that type of friendship, right, Volker?
Yeah, well, at least we show we call each other and talk about things, or can you help me with this, or do you have an idea how we can do that? That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I would say, and that's the nature of our job. If you are taking the time that you're not doing music, it's very precious time
yeah,
because every time you have to listen to something, or and let's say even a friend asks you, can you have a listen to my new album? It's sometimes for me impossible to find the time to have a proper listen. The only time I can have a proper listen is when I'm in the car or when I'm just disappearing from my everyday life, because when I'm done with my studio work, I don't like listen to music. I want to, I want to read, I want to see my family, I
yeah.
want to talk to my son, to my daughters. I want to actually spend time with, with everyone. And so that's a little bit of a challenge to exchange very deep ideas
Right,
over
right.
in the meantime. But I would say Dustin and me, we have a very strong exchange in terms of helping each other and keeping each other up to date. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so I want to say it was about a month ago, give or take. I'm watching a movie called Against the Ice, available on Netflix now, and we're
Mhm.
getting to the end of the movie where they're a little bit of a spoiler. They're taking off, where they were stranded. I'll be a little vague. They're taking off where they're stranded. They're getting a shave. They're about to go on stage, and I'm listening to this music in the background, and I find myself getting emotional. I'm like, who the hell did this music? So I
Mhm.
go look it up. And
Mhm.
I said, that's it. I am going to contact him. He's got to come on. I've been wanting to get you on forever. But what a wonderful score in Against the Ice. Oh, what a wonderful movie.
Mm. Yeah, well, that was, for example, one film of in the past that I did, where I actually also wanted to find an own language and an own strength, juggling the stories. And of course, what you said is something that, of course, is not, you never get a plane like a film that is completely perfect. There's always, you know, films that are having struggles, stories that are maybe, not really telling, are not really fulfilled in terms of their storytelling. Sometimes you have the most wonderful film, but that is completely different than the script.
Right.
And sometimes you have and you decided on making, you know, making the music for a film because you read the script and you're like, yeah, I really love what is written in there. But then the film itself is a complete different beast in a way.
Yeah.
And so Against the Ice was something that I was very attached to, because I had the feeling I wanted to work with more, like sci-fi movies. I wanted to have a film where music is very like carrying the silence a little bit, or where you have like long, like very monochrome landscapes. And I had the feeling that ice and space and water and these things are very interesting for me for
Yeah.
making music.
It's such a great score. And before we dive into Lion quickly, I just wanted to say that your score in Your Honor, it's such a dark, a dark. Oh, I love, like, again, like, it's just people that my passion for just these composers like you that just people don't realize how impactful that is. Like, if I took your music out of Your Honor, no way does that show feel the same. Like,
No.
from the dark moments, the anxiety, and then
Mhm.
your fantastic score is in the background just pumping it through. It's like, wow. I mean,
Mhm.
it really adds to the anxiety of the moment,
Mhm.
you
Well,
know?
I mean, yeah, well, I'm very happy that this comes across, because the work is quite a struggle in terms of finding, not over composing things. And of course, there are scores where I feel now when I'm listening back to them, maybe I did a little too much, or there's a little bit too much melody in there, or so I'm looking at them at some scores quite critical. And because I'm learning. I've done Lion was actually my second movie at all. So
Wow.
in a way, I need a little bit of time, to get into, all the little holes in there that are, which, you can of course say you can make great compositions, but it's not always helpful for the film. The music has to be sometimes very delicate. And you would never buy a record only with delicate scratching of a violin. Maybe you would, but then it would be maybe a very artistic, like a sound installation, I would say. So in a way, that's quite a challenge to find the right amount of tension. That is not always like
Right.
all the time banging and telling people, yes, this has to be fast, there is action, and they all have muscles. I think it needs sometimes a little bit of a diverse approach to tension.
Yeah, and knowing that we were going to speak today, I rewatched Lion for the 200th time, and I got to tell you, the beginning of this movie, right from the beautiful piano. I mean, this is, and I swear I say this to other guests, other composers, other people, friends of mine. It's one of the best composed films ever. I mean, ever. There's no arguing. Hence the nominations. But I have to say, I'm watching this movie for like I said, the 200th time, Volker, and it's like, from the beautiful piano coming in to the butterflies to the boy, just the whole beginning, like, you're in for a ride. And the movie hits me as much as the 200th time as it did the first time. And it's left such a lasting impression on me. The movie came out in 2016. I must watch this once a month in that ballpark, and it never leaves me. The movie has never left me. And we talk about the ending of that movie. Oh my gosh, that from the film tracks to your score again, like that's the sign of great music composition, is what the two of you achieved in Lion, you and Dustin.
Well, first of all, I think it is a wonderful. When Dustin and me, we saw the film the first time, and we were asked to do the film. The film was already like that, without music. We were watching it and we felt like, oh man, I don't know if that film needs at all music, because it's so well crafted, and the story itself is already, it is, I think, maybe a kind of story of every human's longing of finding a home, of connecting somehow with where I'm from and where I'm going to. I mean, we're all in that kind of time frame. Somehow we're caught in that time frame, and we try to find the best way of making something out of it. Some are needing like huge explosions around them to make that happen, and others are very quiet.
Right.
So I think Lion is something that in a way touches this deep longing, but telling it in a way that somebody, like the little boy, loses his home out of not out of his, he wasn't, it wasn't a failure. He was just searching. And then, out of the blue, he just got into this trouble, and he's losing his parents, or at least he can't find them. So I think this is a very rudimental theme. And I remember when we were watching those in Toronto, at the Toronto Film Festival, the first time on a big screen. I mean, everyone around me was already like crying, but not in a, it was not like one tear was falling down.
Yes, it's
really,
true.
they were really crying. And I was, at some point in earlier times, I was always thinking, I don't know if I would cry in a film. There was something more like, I don't know, I can't do this. But I have to say, because that was touching such a rudimental thing, and that is much deeper than, and that's why I think it's also lasting a little bit, because it's much deeper than just the story. It's much more an inner feeling of where is my home?
Mm.
Who are the people that help me? I think it's a kind of archetype of a story, and music to do music for that. I think Dustin and me, we are in a way maybe were made for this type of film, specifically at that time. I think we had all the tools and also the inner feeling maybe for a film like that. That's at least my analysis of why that was in a good combination.
And I would say there's no bigger compliment than watching people to your left and your right get so emotional, right? That says
Yeah.
your music has moved me, because it moves me I mean, when I run, I have a playlist, and Lion
Mhm.
is right there. It's right. I
Mhm.
mean, there's 7, 8 tracks. It's right there. I listen to it, and it continues to touch me. And this is released what, 2016, and
Yeah.
that's a lasting impression. That's huge.
Yeah, but what is also interesting, because meanwhile, of course, we've done many other films, and in the temp track, sometimes the lion theme appears as a, or one piece of lion appears in the temp music, because some editor or an editor was taking it, and he was thinking, oh, I need a very emotional piece here. But if you see then the temp music in a different film, it doesn't work. the
Yeah,
the music the music has such a, I
I
think
agree.
it's so strong, so I would say in a lot of films it's too strong. And I'm not saying that because I want to give my music an own compliment. It's much more about there's a clear statement in that music that when you put that under another film that needs much more like a more delicate and more space and more breath, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So these scenes were, or the music for those scenes were very very crafted in tempo. And I remember we've played tons of pianos where we felt like, oh, this note is not exact, and we had no MIDI to just to just take the note and push it a little bit to the right side. No, we had to replay it over and over again, and it was sometimes, I was in between, I was just thinking, oh man, I don't know, it doesn't feel right, but we have to get it right, like playing wise.
Yeah.
So we took quite a while to get that right, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Is there a part of the movie that really hits you? Like, I mean, I'm not going to ask you if you get emotional during movies, but is there a part of the movie that really resonates with you after all this time?
Uh, oh yeah, I mean the whole film. I think
Yeah.
specifically, I mean the second half is as well an interesting turn in the story, but I have to say the first half of the film, and that's because of the story of the boy. I thought he was. I mean, I haven't seen a boy like that in that age, like acting so well, and I mean
Yes.
the whole appearance, and that was for me very yeah. And I mean, if you see that when you start your theme on the piano, I mean, everything is there. You
Yeah.
just you
Yeah.
have, of course, you have to find a good theme, but
Yeah.
it was really touching. And I mean, it's rare to get films like that.
Yeah, well, and I think your score really is just one of it's a once in a lifetime score for me. It's such a beautiful piece of work. Let me ask you. So,
Thank you.
Dustin was talking about, and I never thought about this. He said, when you're scoring, it comes to like he said, like, I don't know, 7,000 minutes or 8,000. The way he said it was, I never thought of it the way he said it. You're scoring 8,000 minutes, and you're probably doing double that. And I never looked at it that way. When it comes to this movie, Volker, and I only have a few more questions for you. Thank you for all your time.
No
Is it
problem.
as simple as you have the first half of the movie, he has the second half? I mean, I know there's more collaboration involved,
Mhm.
but I thought I read where you had kind of like the first half, Dustin was responsible for the second half. How did that play out? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, you could think that I'm saying the first half is my favorite because that was my half. But it's
No.
but it's actually it's very interesting because in the beginning the director asked me specifically for the first half because he felt like the prepared piano could express a little bit the playfulness of the kid. in a way. And Dustin's music, because it has such a rich, chord movement, and is maybe has a little bit more of a, much more classical field of or classical feel of piano playing. He thought maybe that his way of playing is good for the second half. But and in a way we started the film like that, but at right after the first round we felt like this is not working, because things from the beginning, one, like, travel to the end, and things from the end travel to the front. So we had these back and forth. Then sometimes you write a piece of music for a scene and the director likes it so much. I think that was for example, the scene for I think it's the first time when the boy is on the on the river. It's called the river. This cue.
Yeah.
This was the first cue that, in a way, had the lion theme, like the beginning theme, in there with a harp. And in a way, that was something where we felt like this could. And Garth Davis said, "I really like this theme." So we tried to work with that theme with different instruments, and one was the piano version, and that went then to the opening theme as a main piano theme. So sometimes the music travels. It's not like I'm the composer and I say, I wrote the music for this scene and it has to stay there. No, it's I was inspired. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's not. It's more like an open process. Yes, I got inspired, but I think you need concepts to throw them in the bin and rethink and create new concepts, so that it's a constant flow of creating a new structure that maybe is changing, and then you have to get rid of the old structure and you have to take a new one. So what we did is we made a plan. While we were working on it, we found the plan is not working, so we changed the plan. But it was good that we had a plan to start with.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that's in a way for me how the working process went. And in the end, we exchanged ideas, and let's say he was trying to find a chord structure, and I said, well, he went maybe for a lunch, and I made another 2 chords on top of that. Then he came back, yeah, that's great. And he was working on the chords. So at some point when I was in Los Angeles and we worked together in the studio and we had a whole bunch of ideas, we had a good time in exchanging and throwing ideas to each other, because there was already a lot of substance. The problem is when you start with the two of us and we have no own working space and we are already disturbing each other while we are trying to get ideas, that's not working. It needs first a very intense time with yourself and the film, and then you throw the ideas to each other and say, I think this could work and this could work, and then you compile the best ideas.
Yeah, and I noticed, and I mentioned earlier, the very, very beginning of the movie, and I noticed how everything just is such at a high level, complimenting each other. You mentioned that the child actor, and then your music coming in, and then the butterfly, like everything adds to the other, and that's what I think is so special about it. Do you ever have to be in a place, Volker, so I'm not saying you have to go to Greenland or India to soak in the, I don't know, vibe or get an essence of the movie or sense of the movie. But have you ever gone to a location or been on a set where you're just absorbing, or can a composer do that from far away?
I think, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it makes sense. I think I was once right before, when I did the music for Hotel Mumbai, for that film with where the terror attacks are happening in India, in the Taj Mahal hotel. I had the feeling it might be nice to see the hotel and see actually the location, because everything happened in one location.
Yeah.
And to get a sense of the room and the space and how far it is, and the width of the location, that would have maybe helped me. But I think it was too late I came in too late, and everything was already, it couldn't happen at that point. But besides that, I think sometimes the distance is not such a bad thing, because my imagination sometimes is much stronger. It's a little bit like, have you read the book before the film?
Right. That's a
You
good
know,
compare. Yeah,
it's a little bit like that. And
yeah.
if you read the book, then maybe your imagination is stronger than somebody else explained you what you have to, how the actors look like, or how, how the landscape is like. It needs sometimes the distance and the a neutral ground to create an own approach. And so I'm a big fan of diving into myself, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Without any disturbance, and finding somewhere a place where I can maybe add my feeling to it. And so far, the only actually there's one location I went to, but that was helpful in seeing the technology of how things are made. That
Right.
was the film Stowaway.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah,
Yep.
where
Yep.
and that was because I'm living in Düsseldorf in Germany,
Yep.
and the film was mostly all the studio stuff was done in Cologne, which is 20 minutes away from here. So I could
Oh,
go
great.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could
Yeah.
go there and see, how they were climbing the ropes, and with their astronaut suits. And it's one of the highest stage in filming stage in Europe, where they have like a very high tower where they can do things like that. And so I was watching that. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and my last question, one of the really wonderful performance obviously comes from Dev Patel. I thought I read, Volker, where one of your future projects, Money Man, he's the director. I thought I saw that. Do I
Yeah.
have that correct? So
Mhm.
that's interesting. Are you allowed to say anything about that? What can you say about that?
Well, I have already drafted a few things
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
film, and it's in the making. So we're exchanging thoughts and ideas, and I'm much looking forward to it. I have the feeling it will be wonderful.
Is there a uniqueness there where you scored a piece of music for his performance, but now he's on the other side of things? Is does he remember you from Lion? Is that kind of how that works too? Is the relationship, is that how it formed, or was it just coincidence?
No. Since Lion, we had a very great time
Oh,
together,
great,
all
great.
all of us, and since then, there's always contact, to not to everyone, but to mostly everyone. And I think even when there's no contact, when we see each other, or when I see somebody from that film, because we were so involved in a lot of the in the Q&As and everything. It's very nice to have a little bit of a, that there's no borders to cross into, into the artists, into the actors' worlds, and into the musicians' worlds. And because a lot of the actors, they love music. And I remember we did a concert in the Toronto, at the Toronto Film Festival. I played a show for some of the crew that was there. We rented a club there, and then I played a concert, and of course it was heavy electronic, dark music.
Yeah,
It was nice.
yeah,
We had a lot. What I really love is that there is there's also an interest, and I mean, I would be the same. There's always an interest beyond the thing that somebody delivers to the project. There is a whole life after that, or a whole, there are as many interests maybe, that you don't know about. So I'm very interested in the human beings. And so that's where, I think a while ago, I think it was actually at the premiere of Hotel Mumbai, because Dev is acting in that film as well.
yeah,
I think we met, and we were talking about that film. And so here we are. That
that's great.
will and it will be great.
Yeah, and it's almost like an extended family for you. That's the impression I get from it. Is there anything else you want to throw out there, Volker? Any projects? Anything you wanted to just toss out there?
Well, I finished just now a BBC series called Life After Life, which is a really wonderful series, which is a little bit of it has a transcendental kind of topic about someone who is constantly reborn again. It's a very, I think, a
nice.
very well-known book in England,
Okay.
and I was very pleased with the film. It's directed by John Crawley, who did Brooklyn, the movie Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he did a great job. And we had, for example, that was in a way a similar working relationship like I had with Garth, or I would say with Edward Berger, who did Your Honor, and Patrick Melrose. These are guys where I have the feeling that there is a lot of exchange, and there's a will of letting you do your thing.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
That's fantastic. And Life After Life is one of those shows where I feel like I was doing my thing.
That's going on the watch list as we speak. Volker, just know that I am a huge fan, and I mean this from the heart. Thank you so much for your work. It really has moved me. It's gotten me through some tough times. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you for asking me all these great questions.
Thank you for listening to Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can also connect with Monday Morning Critic on Instagram and Facebook, MDM Critic on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. All episodes available, www.mmcpodcast.com.